All right, welcome back to Guys, Guns, and Gears. Continuing on my toolbox tour, we're to the electrical drawer. Most of the things in here are electrical in nature. I'm going to start right off with multimeter. I've gone through any number of these. This is relatively new. I really like this one because it's so automatic. Just plug it in to whatever you're testing. There's no turning it on. It'll automatically give a continuity test, voltage test, whether it's 12 volt, AC, DC, doesn't matter. And there are some settings on it, but it's really quite foolproof. That's handy. I've got a few smaller ones. This is an inexpensive little Ideal. This one is nice because it's so small and easy to have in my truck. And I've got one like that actually in my truck right now as well. All right, this seems like such a simple tool that there's really nothing to talk about when you talk about a test light, but there really, really is. I wish I had a LED test light here just to show why not to buy, ever to buy or use an LED test light. This one still rocks an old school bulb in there. Maybe they've got test lights now that have resistors in them that won't light up unless there's a certain amount of amp draw. But the nice thing with an old school incandescent light bulb is if it's just making a small amount of contact or electrical contact, it'll only light up a little bit. If it's a full 12 volts or more, it's going to light up nice and bright, and you're going to know I've got a good connection. LEDs lie. They will lie to you. In fact, if you've got an LED and a dirty battery laying around, put the ground on the battery, touch the probe to the dirty battery case, just the plastic battery case. I've done this many times to show guys why not to use them and how they lie, and you can actually get the LED often to fully light up just on the moisture and the dirt on the outside of a plastic battery case. I should probably make a separate video just that, and I'm sure I've got some guys in the shop that have LED ones yet. But this one, I don't know if you can even buy a snap-on incandescent anymore. I bought this shiny new LED one, and shop foreman that I worked with showed me how it lied to me. You can have one strand of wire barely connected and the LED light will fully light up, whereas an incandescent bulb won't light up at all because it actually needs a minor amount of amperage, or it'll barely light up and at least you can tell that you've got some other issues. So highly recommend an old school test light. That's not that terribly old, but I would say it's old school. Test leads. I've got a couple sets of these actually. I got these for free when I took a Boss plow training school course years ago. These extend when you pull them out, and then you can wind them back up. Test leads, super handy to have. Highly recommend a good set of test leads. I've got fuse testers and a few things in there. Don't use those, frankly, too often. Then battery terminal cleaner. You can get these in brushes. This one uses the spring cleaners on there for positive and negative, and then to clean out the female end on there as well. I've had this many years, probably 30 years now. It's one of the earlier tools I've got. I was pretty young, maybe 10, 12 years old when I got that. Then wire strippers. I've got several of these. I like them. I don't really care what brand or flavor, but don't cheap out too much on those. You will be frustrated by doing so. Get a good quality. And then if you're doing any amount of wiring, I would also get a crimper. So this is a crimper and a cutter together. So having the diagonal cutters on the end versus at the back. So this one, you have to feed over your wire to cut. Actually, I just lied. I didn't even realize that. This one has one in the front. Whoops, this one has in the front up here. Many of them have them in the back. This one's, I think, got it in both places. But the cheap ones are in the back, whereas this is right up front. And then you can really get a good amount of leverage on there to properly crimp it down when you're done. I've got duplicates of a lot of these, so I keep them in my pickup just in case I need them. Dielectric grease, fantastic to keep water and dirt out of a connection, keep it clean, whether it's a fuse in an area where it gets some moisture. Very helpful to have the dielectric connector grease. I just happen to have Silglide in the same drawer. Here's another version of a battery post cleaner. This is for load testing batteries. So if you've got a GM screw-in terminal battery and you need to load test it, you can't load test it just by putting your carbon pile load tester that draws amperage through the factory connection on the vehicle. You need to thread one of these lead adapters in and put it on the end. So I've got a pair of those for load testing the GM batteries, like a 778 series and so on. A few other miscellaneous things, not so much electrical, from some Permatex and JB Weld and a few things. Temperature sensor, it's pretty handy. I think I lost my last one and bought this infrared temperature sensor. I've got a few of these for different uses. When you're working on cars, you want to find a cold spot on an engine. It's very easy. You shoot, the different cylinders on the side of the block, and you find a cool cylinder. That's a dead cylinder. You should have heard it, but now at least at this point you can see which one it is. It doesn't have to be terribly accurate, because I generally use these for diagnostic. This one's a super cheap one, and you can spend a lot of money on these. I just buy the cheap ones and don't expect it to be crazy accurate. Then different tapes. I use some liquid electrical tape as well. I've got a few different colors of that. And then in the back where you can't see it, I've got a butane soldering iron, some clamps if I'm going to do some soldering and different solder and flux. On tapes, just a word to the wise, I keep some cheap tape around, and then I keep some high quality, like this is cheap. It's not real flexible. You use it outside, it'll harden pretty quickly and come off, but it's really, really handy. Just, you're doing something not super important, wiring that you really necessarily care about, versus some Scotch or 3M, some really good high quality tape that's going to be much more pliable. It's going to hold up to the elements, the weather. It's going to seal better when you actually need tape to last on electrical. Proper electrical tape, high quality, works well. And then this is another tape I'll use if I have a lot of electrical to do, like I'm going to wire a good deal of it, or I need some strength. This is tiler's tape or plumber's tape. Basically, it is electrical tape. I believe it has all the properties, but it's wider, really sticky, works quite well. Then also I've got some heat shrink tubing, just some random sizes in here that I'll use, from small, both in black and red. So if I'm going to solder a connection and then put some heat shrink tube over it, or if it's in a really bad corrosive area, I'll actually use a heat shrink butt connector and then heat shrink tubing over top of it. It's amazing when you just use a heat shrink butt connector how you can still get moisture inside. And then don't cheap out on this stuff either. Get the really good stuff that has a high shrink rate, meaning it'll go down to 5% or 10% of its size. When you buy this, it'll say it's good from, let's say, 1.5 inches down to 1/2 inch. You can get some that are very thick, some that are thin, various different kinds of there. And then I just keep a sharp scissors next to that when I use it, because I'm usually cutting that down into smaller pieces when I'm using it. So let me show a couple other electrical things before we finish this video. All right, here we've got some electrical connectors. These are all heat shrink in here. from straight butt connectors to step butt connectors, where you'll see it's red on one side, blue on the other. So you can actually have two different size wires. And these are actually quite handy when you're doing like a 2-to-1 or stepping up or down in wires. You know, obviously use those in the right application. And then these go from blue to yellow. Very, very handy to have. From eyelets to male and female spade connectors and the like. Handy set to have. I enjoy off-roading, do some mobile repair, and if I know I need to help somebody out or I'm going to go on a trip, I got this. I have no idea what this jar is for. Oh, look at that, Nutella. And it's got a whole bunch of different stuff inside. So I can pour this on the ground and make a big mess, but there's a pretty much a 99% chance I'm going to have what I need, if not 100% chance I'm going to have what I need to get going. There's even some fuses that I throw in there. So again, for some mobile repair, going to hit the road, help out a friend, go on a trip rather than take the bigger case, although this is fairly large. This is if I'm going on a big trip, and then I've got a smaller one yet, like in my truck right now, just a couple of small things, but I could do quite a bit of repair on the side of the road or on the trail with this, and it's very, very robust, not going to break and get mixed up like this sort of set. All right, we've talked about some heat shrink butt connectors, heat shrink tubing, and now you actually have to shrink it. You can do that. The Zippo, just a standard Bic cigarette lighter, doesn't have to be anything special, or a butane torch, and I use the micro torch quite a bit if I'm going to do a lot of wiring. I have that small soldering kit. I should pull that out and show what that is as well, just so you guys can see. Let me dig that out. All right, I dug it out. If I'm going to do big soldering, I'm just going to use my micro torch. Or really big soldering, I'll just use a full-size propane torch. But if I'm going to do some small soldering, this is a power probe with some different tips on it. There's different brands certainly you can get, but for small soldering, electronics even, this works very, very well. I can vary the heat. I've used this quite a bit. So again, going on a trip, it can be as simple as just taking a Zippo or a standard Bic lighter, or full on up into something like this. But don't forget a lighter. I don't smoke, but I keep one in the truck. And I use it. Pretty surprising how often I'll grab that lighter for different things. All right, I wanted to end this video with some sprays. You don't necessarily think of this necessarily under electrical, but they can come in quite handy. So just over in my garage, I see some different things. So electronic cleaner. This is almost just compressed air, but it's got a little bit of solvent in it to clean a slightly dirty connection. Basically the same thing as the contact cleaner. This is just a cheaper version. You know, you see I paid $12.69 for this can. It lasts a long time, and works quite well. I mean, in a pinch, you can use brake cleaner or carburetor cleaner to do some cleaning as well, but it's not the same as the contact cleaner. Even into the sensitive electronics, a can of mass airflow cleaner here. Don't be spraying mass airflow sensors with one of these others. I've heard some horror stories, never done it myself because I've used the proper ones, fluids. Even starting fluid works quite well in a pinch, just to use that to clean something up, electrical connection. I wouldn't be using on a mass airflow sensor, but a lot of other connections you can do just as starting fluid. And then we've got battery cleaner and battery protector. So just a word on the battery cleaner. You can use baking soda and water, put it on a battery, put it on a connection, clean up that connection really quite well, or spray it with this battery cleaner. And then once everything's dry and clean and ready to go, I'll spray this battery protector on the lug of the battery or the connection, and it puts like a greasy film on it and just protects it like it says there, and it inhibits corrosion. So that works quite well. Your electrical system's only as good as the connections that make it up. So whenever possible, solder connections, especially battery connections, never use those basically those crimp on or bolt on battery connectors where you just strip the wire and do that. Unless you're on the side of the road or stuck out in the woods and you just got to get back, by all means, do what you got to do. But use the proper tools, do it right the first time, and heat shrink it, keep the corrosion out, and it'll last a very, very long time. On that subject of cleaning the connection, I don't have any here at home, but in the shop at the farm we do have some muriatic acid, and it's very helpful on electrical wires, especially if there's a little corrosion on there or a little heat blackening on the wire, and it won't solder well. So you just dip that in a little bit of muriatic acid. It'll clean it up just like new, make that copper look brand new, and it'll solder up very, very nicely. Hope that helped. That concludes my tour of the electrical part of my toolbox and garage. Feel free to message me with any questions. Thank you very much for watching.